presentar esta mañana la conferencia magistral de Kidlat Tahimik, un invitado de honor este año en el marco del festival, ha vuelto ya un gran amigo nuestro del festival y de todos que han tenido oportunidad de pasar un rato con él a lo largo de estos 9 días. Kidlat, welcome. We're going to give you the microphone. You're in charge. We'll have an academic here soon to keep you in line and ask you all the difficult questions. But it's an honor to have you, and we look forward to this masterclass. Welcome.
Sarah just mentioned how to keep Kidlat Tahimik in line, and that's almost impossible. Anyway, today already we started offline. Oh, online, offline. Sounds like. I couldn't find my eyeglasses. I couldn't find my drive because I wanted to show some examples of clips from my film. But as a third world filmmaker, I'm always ready. So I have my analog escultura de madera. I have my body to make up for the digital loss. So, yeah, they call this a master class. And I don't know, maybe for me it's not appropriate. I mean, I'm sure Gus Van Sant and I guess Terry Gilliam are also having their own master classes. You know, just for your information, I just completed a 35-year-old film, a film I made for 35 years, which I will try to show samples of. And it's really against the rules of a straight line filmmaking. I took 35 years to wander here and there until, oops, oh, I crossed the finish line. It was if I tell, you know, when I studied economista, yo estaba economista 45 years ago, and then I said, no, it's too much the rule to stay on track, to be a good banker, to be a good minister of economics. You must stay on track. And my whole being an artist today, why I'm here, why my crazy films are being shown in different parts of the world, is because I did not stay on track. I strayed on track. I don't know how the translator is going to translate that. But anyway, instead of the straight line and do your, like maybe go to a film school, get a PhD in blockbuster filmmaking, and then go to Hollywood, that straight path, and be a Harvey Weinstein, somebody like that. I was going here, and then if I hit like a billiard ball, you hit another billiard ball, you go there, and you go here, you go there, and somehow you reach the finish line. About 1987, wow, that's about 30 years ago, I was invited to a conference in Duke University, and I had to do a paper. And I'm not used to doing a paper. I usually talk spontaneously, and my thoughts come together, partly because of the audience, partly because of yesterday's happenings, yesterday's screenings, yesterday's questions, and they become a central core what I'm going to talk about. And at that conference, I remember I was on an airplane and I was using my portable typewriter. They did not have yet the Mac laptops in those days, 1987. And I had to type the title of my paper, because they said, if you don't have a paper, you cannot get an honorarium. So I had to write it, and we had a 10-hour flight across the Pacific, and I was able to get my paper done, and I typed the title, and I was comparing my way of filmmaking. I call it cups of gas filmmaking, okay? Cups of gas, you put una taza de gasolina en su coche, después quelques kilómetros, you stop, you beg, you steal, you borrow the next cup of gas, you pour it into your car, you reach another place, but little by little, you get to the end of your journey, okay? So I call it cups of gas filmmaking, which is for people with no budget, people with just a strong duende to make your film, tell your story. And now this is in comparison to the Harvey Weinstein way. I call it full tank cum credit card filmmaking. Okay? You have plotted your way from East Coast to West Coast. You know every gasoline station that you need to fill up. You have your full tank. Maybe you have a few canisters of gasoline or diesel in your trunk. And you have your credit card. So maybe you make from East Coast to West Coast in 2 weeks, and you're there. It's an efficient route. But my way, east, west, southwest, east, west, northwest. But then I finally get to the West Coast, and that is my cups of gas filmmaking. Now when I was typing my paper, I accidentally, you know when you make a typographical error, you press the wrong key. So I wrote cups of gas filmmaking, Filmmaking, filmmaking. Then when I put versus cups of gas filmmaking, I spell it Fillmaking, filmmaking. Okay? What's the Spanish? Well, my translator will tell that. So instead of filmmaking, it was filmmaking. I said, oh, it's a cosmic typographical error. It says it all. I'm making films, I'm telling stories. My duende is trying to share something with whoever will be my audiences. But the filmmaking is like the grocery shelf, no? Take out the can and fill up the next can. There's a dog food can out, put up the next dog food on the shelf. So I think Hollywood is very much of the filmmaking approach. It's driven for a profit. So you have a high turnover of dog food or ketchup or TV dinners. And that's the main purpose. But I think when you're an independent filmmaker, you're often driven by your inner duende. I'll explain what the duende is. Your inner driving force. I must tell this story. What I've been trying to do for the last 45 years. I started filmmaking about 1975. I was just looking for an audience, no? You know, when you're a painter or a writer, you just want at least to get an audience, no? Somebody to read it. You're not looking for the big, wide audience. You're looking for just some feedback. So sometimes for us, well, I think many filmmakers here would know that the big distributor is really way out of our reality, and you're happy. Okay. So it's a way of still telling our stories, but you get somebody say, "Hey, that's a funny story," or say, "Hey, I didn't understand your story." You look for a cold audience, and that film festival is always a way to get your first cold audience. You know, it's very easy to fill up your first screening with all your amigos and amigas, you know, everybody's there, and after they look at the film and say, "Oh, pare, es muchos, cute, I liked your," well, everybody's sympathetic to you, but when you have a cold audience, you have some people say, "Hey, I found that too hard," or "Hey, I walked out at this place." So I got my first cold audience in the Berlinale, Berlin Film Festival. And I think I got a pat on the back. Bueno, bueno. It was the cold audience and the critics. And I was encouraged to do my Cups of Gas filmmaking, which I have followed for the last 45 years. It means I do with the resources I have. Well, maybe I can save for 6 months a little money to buy a few rolls of film. I started with film. I was really using, you know, this thing you call film. We filmmakers call it spaghetti, because when the film starts falling down, it's hard to unwire it like a spaghetti dish. And even a few rolls at a time, a few cups of gas at a time, my film would get completed, and I would one day let it go so it would be shown in the film festival. Now this is very different from the kind of filmmaking where you have to, I'm sorry, if I hear myself through a Spanish voice, I get distracted. When you work this way, with Cups of Gas filmmaking, you have an open deadline. You don't have a producer breathing down your back. Hey, you have to finish in 1 month, and we have a play date in 2 months, because the bank is going to collect money from me, the producer, in 3 months, you know? And that kind of pressure makes you, I think you lose your fun making your films. Yesterday, one of the people in the audience said that, oh, they liked the film because it was playful, it had a feeling of being family-like, it had a feeling of being relaxed. And I said, well, maybe that's because I didn't have a banker with an MBA pushing me every minute of the way. And I could just, do my cups of gasoline, stop, do it another here. Maybe that's why my last film, which I'll show clips of later, it's about the Viaje de Magallanes, no? But I was more interested in El Esclavo de Magallanes, not Magallanes. And because I was interested in that slave who might have been the first person to circumnavigate the globe, not Magellan. Magellan died in the Philippines. Hey, Lapu-Lapu! Our chieftain who killed Magallanes. Magallanes like 900 kilometers more to complete his voyage. Yeah? But the slave, somehow because he went with Magallanes all the way around, had come back to an island where he could speak the language, where he learned the language. So maybe the first man to go around the world was a Filipino. Well, we were not Filipinos then, we were, Philip, for those of you who saw my film yesterday, Philip were named after the Rey de España, Felipe II, and in my film, one of the artists tells my son, Philip, Philippines, but you know that King Philip died of syphilis, and that's why our name Philippines sounds like Philippines. And that's a karma we have to break. I think our country is having many problems because we still have the karma of King Philip. But never mind, back to the... Yeah, so maybe instead of a master class, let's just call it an esclavo class, okay? Anyway, 35 years I was doing that film. And but whether it's taking 35 years or even 5 years to finish, or even 2 years, if you're working with your own time frame, and your own time frame is not the banker's time frame or the producer's time frame, but it's the time frame of the cosmos. You're playing ping pong with the cosmos, and you're enjoying it. You can stop playing and the ball can go slow motion, and then you're taking a vacation and then catch the next ball. Sometimes you have a good energy, then you wait 5 years, and somehow 35 years will pass by so fast. Well, maybe it wasn't so fast, but my son, Kawayan, was 1 year old when I started the film in 1979, the Magallanes film, and I stopped the film, again, waiting for the ping pong ball to come. I stopped about 1988, maybe 10 years, and I said, I will come back to the film, maybe in 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, but the 8 years, 10 years became 15, 20, until it became 35 years. And I don't know why, I'll show you later anyway, footages, but I think I was waiting for my 1-year-old son to develop a big balbas? Balbas? Barba. You see, the Filipinos say balbas. I think it's a orientalization of barbas. It's making balbas. But when he grew up a nice beard, I said, oh, now I know why we were delayed 35 years. My old Magellan had died in the film. Had died, and I was looking for a new Magellan. My son grew up to become the next Magellan. So this is how you play with the cosmos, okay? Cosmos means opening up your time frame. Of course, it's very hard to do if you're working for Hollywood, or even not even for Hollywood, for any producer. And I cannot recommend this to everybody. But just for the sake of comparison, for my paradigm is, I don't like to believe in that dictum, the main dictum that's ruling the world today, time is money. Have you heard that? Time is money. Dinero is... The tiempo, huh? El tiempo es dinero. And already, when we were young, we learned that we have to get per schedule, we have to catch the bus, we have to be at school at this time. It becomes a way of life. And I think when you have that way of life and you stick too much to it, maybe you're shutting out the cosmic contributions to your painting, to your novel, to your film, no? It's an echo chamber. We live in this echo chamber. Okay, you know the echo chamber. It's just that every day you're hearing the things that say, oh, democracy is good, or communism is bad, or to have a Rolls Royce is good, to go to the disco is wow, cool. So all this echo chamber makes us consumers, makes us good economic citizens, and therefore we have to follow that echo chamber. But sometimes you have to break out of that echo chamber and say, hey, I want to take my own time. I want to see what I see, not what my teacher told me to see, my professor told me to see, the frame of my producer, the frame of mi madre and mi padre. We have to slay the father or the mother. You know the Shakespearean, let's slay the father so we can be who we are. Now I'm not talking about the ego of who we are in the sense, I must be me, I must be me. I'm just saying, let's break out of the prisons of our echo chamber. And then maybe we can be free to be storytellers, okay? So as a master class today, or esclavo class, I like to maybe help ping pong with you. If you want to have that craziness, that freedom of some of the films that I've shown the last few days. Maybe the cosmos made me lucky enough that I did not go to film school. I'm not saying film schools are bad, but I think, watch out, sometimes the film school can put a straight jacket around you and you're not as free to tell your story. And especially a medium like film. It's so complicated in terms of technology, and when you add to that the layers of rules from the 7 arts, you have to have good actors, you have to good lighting, you have to have good escena. It becomes, and then you have the bankers protocols, you know. All these make it so difficult to tell a story. So, let's say Kidlat Tahimik is not a movie maker in the same sense of the word movie, but let's just say I'm a storyteller who happened to use film. Well, in the 40 years ago it was film, película, spaghetti, and now of course it's video. You don't have that physical noodles, but it's a new technology that changes and maybe even makes faster the deadlines for your storytelling. But again, we step out of that echo chamber of time is money, and maybe you can tell a story that the world is waiting for. Usually we have to do the formula story because there's a deadline and because we have to pay the bankers on time, or the producer has to do that. Okay, this is not a course on economics. Today, yeah, time is money. There is a time frame, we have to be finished at 1 o'clock. But let me see how I can best share with you what makes Kidlat Tahimik Duende tick, no? I don't think I'm a film genius. I'm only able to do the stories because I have a co-director, the Cosmos, or a co-director, the indigenous tribes that live around my city, or I have a family that got westernized through education, or shall we call it colonization. So this combination makes my duende have a very special frame of the world. I realize that duende is a Spanish word, but we use it in the Philippines like a duende of that rock, or a duende of the mountain, or the duende of the river. It talks about a certain spirit within that rock or that forest. And I like to think of it as a playful, creative energy inside each of us. Think of, an energy that can tell stories. But if you let your duende tell your story with its special frame, my duende has this frame, your duende has maybe that frame, your duende has maybe that frame, but it's a frame. And it's that unique frame that I think independent filmmakers want to share. And where does that unique storytelling duende come from? Now, I don't want to sound like a theoretical academician, okay? I'm just creating a metaphor, maybe which any of you people who want to become a filmmaker, and it's never too late to become a filmmaker or a storyteller, okay? So, let me just give a favorite examples of mine. We're talking about creativity now, okay? And we'll show samples later. When I talk about the duende, please don't think it's something like from a Harry Potter film, you know, the smoke, there's a duende there. The duende is inside us, okay? It's a form of ganado, an energy to share something with somebody else or with an audience. Our duende is composed of that energy that comes from for me, two major influences. One is your personal upbringing, how you grew up, your family life when you were a child. So my favorite example is, for example, if your father was a military person, dos plus dos no es cinco, no es cinco, I hope you don't have a father like that. Or let's see where it goes. Let's see where it goes. Now, these two kind of upbringings, your framing of the world already is affected. Now, the other major influence on your duende's framing is your culture, no? Your cultura. Okay. Your culture makes you familiar with certain things and makes you maybe unfamiliar with other things. So, okay, if you grew up in a village in the Philippines where, okay, some of you saw me yesterday with my performance. Yeah, if you see a person, well, let me open up if you see somebody walking around in a taporabo, let me go back to my costume. Okay. And you grew up in a village where taporabo is normal, no? So you see the person walking around in taporabo, and it's normal, no? But if you grew up in the city, maybe you were a colegiala in a very escuela exclusiva, and you see somebody walking out in a taporabo and say, pompa. Is that correct, pompa? I learned that word yesterday, thank you. It's you frame it maliciously because maybe your Catholic culture or your New York culture says it's uncivilized to wear a taporabo. But if you come from a cultura where it's normal, you don't notice it. Maybe you say, that taporabo is woven by my grandmother, you know? And you see other things that others don't see. So when you combine your cultural influence on you and your personal growth, the kind of parents you had or the kinds of teachers you had, I think you will have a very different combination. And of course, then you can add the political situation of the world. Today, everybody is worrying about the rightist movement towards Trump and Duterte and other, what's the name of the Brazilian president? I mean, everybody's, so that will affect also the way you frame your films. No? Or when we were in the 1972, we were having the ley martial, and our President Marcos became a tighter and tighter rule, control over the Filipinos, and finally the Filipinos had to break out. That's my film this afternoon, Why is Yellow Middle of the Rainbow? That was the initial Duende drive to tell that story. And so political circumstances, social circumstances will also eventually affect how you tell your story, how you make your film, how you write your novel, okay? I think, I've been talking about the Duende as a driving force, maybe like in contrast to money as a driving force, or fame. I'll be a glorious Harvey Weinstein producer, all these are different motivations for making a film, but when it's just simple storytelling, I think that's why I chose the metaphor for duende, because it's also a word in Filipinas, no? But somebody at the last festival in Tui, in España, somebody asked me, have you read Garcia Lorca? Because he talks about the duende of the flamenco dancer now. And that person told me a little bit about how it was. And I said, well, I've never read Garcia Lorca, but yes, I think I'm talking about that the inner fire, no? El fuego del artista, the fuego del flamenco dancer, the fuego de escritor de novela. This fire, I think, is the most important thing when you're telling a story. Now, people who are in the Hollywood school, maybe the fire will come from the fact that after the film you will make $1 million. That's a kind of fire too, but that becomes exclusive for a small group of people who can get into the Hollywood circles, no? But for the rest of the world, which is maybe 97%, and you want to tell a story and want to use film for telling a story, well, you have to find other ways. But finding other ways is one thing, and ganado, is that the word, ganado? You're ganado to to make that story. Then you depend on everybody has. Everybody has that energy. You just have to discover your duende, nurture your duende, and let it go. Let its voice say, this is my story. And you don't have to have a producer telling you over your shoulder, hey, we have to have 7 sex scenes before the end of the film, or in 45 minutes in the film we have to have bang, 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 bang. That's what happens when you surrender to the duende of the producer. I mean, duendes have their own, producers have their own duendes who want to do their own thing, but let's stick to our creative duende as storytellers, whether filmmakers or whatever. Okay, maybe since I could not find my drive, but I think we will be able to find at least 1 or 2 films I can show. You know, very often I've also, instead of just a straight lecture, you know, it's sometimes blah, blah, blah is too much. Are you already overdosed? How many of you are getting sleepy? Well, let's see. Let me give something that's a little bit more visual. Please stand by muna. Okay, where I come from, I think, and also here in Mexico, you have legendas, you have mythologies, you have stories from the pre-colonial days, and maybe sometimes they get mixed up with stories from the colonial days, and then with exciting Hollywood movies. They can all influence the way your story goes. No? Now, I've been talking the last half hour about how a duende story grows within somebody like me. If I were very concerned with getting my market, my 500% profit, and I'm looking towards a commercial film industry, then I think that limits my choice of stories. Because I know that they will only produce a film that has the formula, okay? What's the formula? It's, you repeat it and you will get the same thing. So 2 plus 2 is 5, 4, okay? Some meat plus some spices plus a bun will always give you a Big Mac. Or mixing water with some sugar and some coca will give you a soft drink. So repeating the formula is basically what runs the industry. When you let your duende tell its story, then maybe you can do your own storytelling that maybe won't earn $1 million from 50,000 people watching your film, but maybe your original story will excite a few people who go to film festivals like you, because it's a bit different. When you're tasting, this is not a boring hamburger. Oh, this mole has 120 ingredients. From the days of the Aztecs. And although it's not as sensational as a fried chicken from KFC or a Starbucks, whatever, it's something different. And maybe this is what the world is waiting for. And the days of just one big mass market that could be calculated by the economists in Hollywood and would create the formula that would create that blockbuster. Maybe the days are, it won't be finished, there will always be a market for that, but I think with platforms like YouTube and other ways of showing the not blockbuster money-making film, there's more possibilities for us, for our story to reach there. So, okay, you know, in the Philippines, in the Ifugao tribe, there's a story of Inhabian, the goddess of the wind. And the goddess of the wind. The story is that Inhabian was a weaver, you know, backstrap loom. I mean, filmmakers are weavers. No? We're weaving, maybe we're weaving a taparabo or we're weaving a blanket, but it's our story. And she was weaving, maybe a taparabo with a backstrap loom. You know, what's a backstrap loom, Vivi? Vivi? Backstrap loom. You know, when you're weaving, and there's a belt in cinturón in the back.
El cinturón para tejer. La cintura.
Anyway, there's a
Yes.
cinturón, and it's pulling the strings. So Inabian was weaving with her backstrap loom, and the god said, "Oh, let's test this woman," and they started blowing her around. Inabian. You know, but she survived the test. She survived the test because the cinturón of her loom was like a cinturón in a coche, no? Like a security belt in the car. So she survived the test, and the gods were very impressed and said, "Oh, Inabian, we will make you goddess of the wind, diosa de viento." So today, when there's a typhoon coming to the tribal village, they invoke her. "Oh, Inabian, please change the direction of your wind. Spare our village, don't hit our village." So this has made her a living tradition. Until today, in spite of all the modernization, there are people who still pray to her. I think in modern countries, when there's a typhoon coming, you pray to the disaster center and you look for your evacuation center, because that's all provided to you by modern societies. Now, I like that story, and since I'm trying to make young artists, young filmmakers aware that, hey, we don't have to be stuck in the echo chamber of Hollywood and other things and other consumer promoters. So why not have another goddess to be confronted by our local goddess? So I found the goddess of the wind of Hollywood, okay? La diosa de viento de Hollywood, okay? See, I don't even have to introduce her. Now, when I put them together, so this is my framing now, okay? This for me is the important thing. This is a visual that I'm able to create. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, no? So if I tell young filmmakers, I'm not anti-Hollywood per se, but I'm very concerned that there's an overdose of Hollywood stories. These Hollywood stories come the commercial way, and since our country is following the capitalistic model of America, we have malls, we have cineplexes, they will only show films that are profitable. So all the stories of Spider-Man, Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, they come and flood our cultural scene, and the children don't anymore hear the story of Inabian, the goddess of the wind. All they get are stories about super people with wearing masks. I don't know why they're wearing masks. And they are using technology, laser beams, and all kinds of things. And anyway, we forget these stories, or no, we don't even hear the stories anymore. So maybe as an independent cineast, so that we can tell the story of Inabian, trying to keep at bay, trying to keep away, distancia amiga, so that we can tell our own stories, okay? So here I'm playing with some wood carvings that I brought from my country. In my film about Magallanes village, about Magallanes Viaje, I played esclavo, And I'm a wood carver there, so I've learned to do some wood carving, but I have to have it finished by some good wood carvers from Ifugao. So, who's going to spread the story of Inabian? Okay, enter the independent filmmaker with his bamboo camera. Okay. So the cineasta independiente has a choice. Even if the bankers are trying to adjust and say, oh, we need your talento, we want you to make another brown Marilyn Monroe film, you know, brown skinned. Let's let the independent filmmaker tell the story with his own punto de vista. And this is symbolized by my bamboo camera. For those of you who saw my performance yesterday, I bring out the bamboo camera as a metaphor, no? The metaphor that we can tell stories with our own punto de vista, our own point of view. Okay? We don't have to use that point of view of the duendes of Hollywood. We don't have to be motivated by the money-making machine that chooses only the stories that are part of the echo chamber today. More sex. Oh, that's cool, man. Oh, wow, more pat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. By the way, I noticed when I came up here the road, coming to the convention center, there was a big billboard of the GIF, the Guanato Film Festival. And on the other side was another big billboard with somebody with a sniper. I don't know, maybe it's an advertisement for the police academy or something like that. But wow, how strong these images are really dominating our life. You cannot even get away from it. You ride on a bus and the screen on the bus is showing. You go to even the sounds, no? Yesterday, I was showing my film in the Pequeño cinema, and there was this boom, 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 boom. They were just test sounding, but you know, I mean, it's nice to have that sound when you're in a disco, no? But when you're just for every day, it's, and even small villages now, they have the little, we even used to have the Walkman and things like that. Always boom, 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 boom. Somebody told me that some psychologists have said that they're using this in the malls now, so it's a psychological tool, so you will buy more. I don't know, but we can't get out of this commercial echo chamber because sometimes you want just to hear your duende voice in you, helping you create a new story, a new situation for a film. And that's part of our awareness that we need, that we have to get out of that echo chamber. We have to step out so that we can be ourselves. No? So I have my little installation here. This already can be a movie sequence. I add another, add it to the forces to keep the Hollywood story away. Well, maybe just do this way. Yeah, and just add a few more. Yeah. Here's the young person who wants to hear a relevant story, and maybe steps out of his echo chamber and he becomes an audience for the Inabian story. Maybe he's the one who doesn't go anymore to the malls and says, hey, I don't have to contribute so much to the profits of Harvey Weinstein. I can just listen to our old village storyteller and let her give me stories that are relevant. For me, Inabian is also a symbol of having harmony with Mother Nature. No? So she's also a benevolent force. She brings the seasons, she brings the tides, but she can also change the direction of the typhoon. I have a funny story I just remembered. I must have some kind of a karma with winds. Those of you saw my first film, La Pesadilla Perfumada. Yeah, I also blow away the party guests of my boss, who is a colonizador. And the line is there, when the sleeping typhoon blows off his cocoon, his echo chamber, the butterfly is freed and he can embrace the sun. This kind of theme has been with me since 75. And then I found that sometimes because I saw a retrospective of my films while I'm in a festival, and I saw, hey, I have a typhoon also in Turumba. At the end of the film, there's a typhoon that threatens the village tradition of a procession de la Madonna. And then I have it again in the yellow film, which those of you who go this afternoon will witness it. But maybe my duende is a typhoon. I just realized. And if it keeps recurring, now I just remembered that besides in my film, there was a film festival in 1992. I was in the Yamagata Film Festival in Japan, and somehow the typhoon had a direct hit on Yamagata City. And then in 2012, I was in Fukuoka. I received a prize. And on the last day, we were hit again by a really Category 4 typhoon. And in New York, I happened to be in New York the day Sandy, the Hurricane Sandy. So I must have something with it, or maybe my stories, my duende stories are attracting the typhoon, but that's another story. But then I'm hoping that maybe today I can create a few typhoons here. Sarah just told me there was a big earthquake in the Philippines yesterday. Ano ba niyo yun? San? Ha? Ay, Batanes! Wow, the most northern tip of our country was hit by an earthquake. Well, earthquake was also in my film, Vice Yellow, Middle Brain, which you'll see, those of you want to see it today. I have typhoons, I have volcanoes, I have earthquakes. It's not because I am looking for disasters, like the Hollywood film has to have a sense around earthquake, where your chair shakes or the sound makes you feel you're being blown away. I think it's just, well, the Philippines is a country that, and I think you have it in common. There are a lot of earthquakes here, you have volcanoes here. You also have hurricanes? Also? Okay. So we have a very common, elemental, basic common experience. No? I mean, before colonialism, before economic globalization, there was nature that we shared. And that's a nice topic for a film, if anybody here wants to think about it. Pwede na tayo kawayan? Pwede tayo magpakita ng may balikbayan? Sige, let's show the first few minutes.
Basta may luma yung bago.
Mas first few minutes lang naman. Mas ganun. Any version. Okay. I'll come now to show you some visuals that have come in my film. I think, today, okay. I got panicked when I realized that I was leaving the hotel. I couldn't find my drive. I didn't have my lenses. How was I going to organize today? But in our hotel room, there's this ritual picture hanging over our bed. This is how the cosmos helps you make up. If the technology breaks down, if there's a electricity blackout, you have to tell your story with your whatever's around you. So I noticed that there are two figures here and even a third one. And I'm not going to give an anthropological explanation. I'm not an anthropologist, but here you see two different persons, but there's the outer person, and inside there's something. Also here, there's a person and there's somebody inside. Maybe that's the duende. Our duende is very different from that duende, and the duende sees the corn from a different punto de vista. So maybe this creating story is talking about a snake or a worm that he saw in the corn stalk. Or maybe this duende sees, I don't know, is this a melon? Or a melon growing rice with a star? I don't know. But anyway, it's a very different punto de vista. Their duendes can make a different film or make a different novel. And I think that's all there is really, or that's the most fundamental thing in each of us who want to share a story. It's not the technology, it's not having the best, latest 20 gigabyte, 20 MG? Mega. Or what was the?
Megabytes.
What's the next version? 5?
Terabyte.
The camera's 5 terabyte, whatever. The latest digital technology.
Case?
Or having the super crane, or having the drone. You know, these are all tools, but in the end, maybe out of panic, I saw this and I asked the hotel owner, can I borrow your painting so that I can tell us? And here, maybe even this central figure is also has a duende inside, and it's growing that stalk. It's giving the spectators some way that their own duendes can react to that corn stalk. You know, there's a corn here. So I'm making my own story with respect to the artist who made this. And yeah, and it's also a metaphor. We can learn so much from our indigenous cultures. No? Let's stop believing that Wikipedia is everything, and that all our references that have come from previous researches are always a gospel truth that cannot be contested. I think when we tell stories, we're also creating some new truths. It's not a scientific truth. Again, it's a Western bias. You have to have it scientific. You have to have it empirical data. You have to have statistics, etc. But it might be a material defense of the Western world against the spiritual strength that we have. I think non-industrial people or less industrialized people have a strength of spirit, which maybe I call the duende, but it's a way of coping with the world. Sometimes I'm reading in the internet, there are big paranoia now in America and in Europe. People are getting very negative about their environment, their stature. They feel that they read about the global warming. And there are many people who have what they call climate grief. I don't know if that's anyway, a friend wrote me, she's so depressed because she has climate grief. Maybe in the world where you cannot interact so much with a fellow human being and you just interact with your machines, and then you read about the spectacular news about melting glaciers and polluted rivers. And even if you're not a fan of Donald Trump's economic policies, you may start coming down. But okay, I think when I see this in Mexico, and like also in my country, we still have a culture that is very compassionate, no? Muy simpático. There's more contact between me and the other. Let me just give a brief diversion. You know, we have a old indigenous value, core value in the Philippines, which I feel I also sense here. Maybe about 40 years ago, a professor in the university said, why are we analyzing Filipinos through Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, and through the rats of Skinner? What do we have to do with the rats of Skinner? But you know, Filipinas is so colonized that our universities have many copycat cultures of the universities in America. So if psychology is very intensive about Sigmund Freud, so we've been using that, and many psychologists in the urban areas are talking to an innocent or more rural person and saying, the trouble with you is you're schizophrenic. Huh? What's schizophrenic? Can you eat that? Makakain ba yun? And he said, let us look for a relevant psychology, an indigenous psychology, which is based on a core value of Filipinos. And after several professors got together and they were able to discover something they call Psikolehiyang Pilipino, Filipino psychology, and they found a core value around which a lot of our behavior might revolve. And it's called kapwa. Okay, kapwa is when I, as an individual, include the other person. When I make any decisions, the other is important as to my personal decision. We are an including culture. I'm sure Mexicans, I feel it here. Ivy is very including when she's helping us find our way to the to the center, and a lot of people I met. I mean, this is in contrast to an industrial culture or a culture in New York or in Tokyo, where the industrial economy is pitting you against each other. No? It's like a cockfight. What's a cockfight?
Pelea de gallos. Pelea de gallos.
Pelea de gallos, okay? Everybody is automatically mistrusting the other person. So you don't include people you don't trust, no? That's normal. But industrial culture has made us suspicious, less open. And I think if that is the kind of culture that is in the industrial countries, maybe that's why they have many films about serial killers. Maybe they have more films about lonely people who cannot cope with the world. But if our filmmakers start copying that model, because it's relevant maybe to New York, but Filipinos are like Mexicanos, more happy-go-lucky. Let's have another tequila, amigo. Tell me about your problem, your sweetheart, whatever. It's an openness of your cultura that maybe you get more close in the industrial country. Okay, I'm not giving a psychology, but I'm just saying we have a common culture, and maybe that was started suppressed 500 years ago by los colonialistas españoles, yeah? And maybe Filipinos is different from Mexico. We were really officially colonized by America. They put a Governor General in Filipinas, Gobernador General, and they created political institutions and economic institutions like the banks and the legislatura and the presidencia. You know, we were copies of American policy, and even capitalism as a way of controlling the smaller participants in the economy. Maybe you were not colonized by America, but because you were a neighbor of America, and because many immigrantes have crossed to the other side, and they pick up the American dream, and they come back here, and they start their own big enterprise. Maybe this is a common experience too. Plus la religión católico. If you saw my film yesterday, and as I said, you can close your eyes, turn on your camera, turn 370 degree, and you will find in your footage 2 or 3 cathedral or capilla or a cross, because it has stayed in spite of, yeah, we are free from Spain since 1898. We had a revolution against the Spaniards, and when we were fighting a revolution, I just found out, is it Hidalgo? Who's your main hero to start the revolution? Hidalgo, yeah. And we had Bonifacio. Bonifacio, you see him in my other film, is also holding the machete. Sugod mga kapatid! Forward, brothers, let's fight for democracy, for our freedom. And these kinds of heroes are slowly getting lost to our youth. But anyway, that's another problem. But our common fight for freedom against whether it's Americanos or Españoles, and you add to that layer of indigenous heroes. I'm sure that los cuentos, historias de pueblos indigenosos have very many interesting figures who can be metaphors for libertad, you know? But because maybe the Christian or the invading Catholic said they were bad people. I just saw in San Miguel de Allende una museo de máscara, no? And I think I could see similarities because the Spanish were trying to suppress the local culture, but the máscaras were actually sometimes mocking the ilustrados, no? The Spanish ilustrados. They would show fight between the Moros and Spanish heroes, but the local artist would make, or the duende of that local artist would make the mask a little bit crazier. The Espanol is actually supposed to be the bad guy in their village, the haciendero maybe. But they had a way of incorporating into their stories maybe the outer layer is a Western narrative, that Catholic or Christian superhero versus the Muslim, the Moro. But by incorporating their own animal figures, sometimes you see a deer or a jaguar, and wow, you can find another interpretation. But the colonialist sense of who's good and bad, we are good and you're bad, and you have to come to us, amen, now you're good. What does that do to our cultura? Well, let's go more specific. What does it do to our storytelling? And there's so many stories that are waiting to be told. And because of our unique growing up with a mixture of, we cannot erase. No puede borrado? Borrar. No puede borrar la experiencia colonial. But we can at least be aware which of those colonial experiences are suppressing us or suppressing our duende. And maybe because our collective duende in a country like Mexico or Filipinas is being suppressed, and more of the people are trying to be like the cool guy in New York or the cool guy in Paris, that we are not contributing our fullest strength as citizens of our countries. We're not able to contribute our best self because we are trying to be like that guy that we saw in the Hollywood movie yesterday, driving a sports car, being cool with the girls, or that super laser gun that can erase the bad King Kong. So again, are we able to show now? You've connected. Anong nakakuha dyan ngayon? MOD. Okay. Now we can move to something that at least might illustrate what I'm talking about. For the last 100 years, we have, even 200 years, we have believed that Magallanes ay descubrido the Pilipinas. We were always there before he came. But then there's the wave of missionaries who told us, your gods are the work of the devil. Throw away your wood carvings. Follow our hierarchy of gods and santos. And so in doing that, we are also losing some of our own connection to our strengths. So, as a filmmaker or a storyteller, let me try to be a revisionista de historia. Okay, I'll be a well, this is my creation, but it's also based on some historical facts. Anyway, let's look at the opening scene of my film. It's called Balikbayan #1. Balikbayan is a word in the Philippines which means for las personas que viajado a New York, a trabajo a Saudi Arabia, o estudiado en América, que revolver, to return, leaving, to return to their country.
Regresar a su país.
Huh? Regresar a su país, okay. That's Balikbayan. And it's Balikbayan numero 1. The first person to go around and back home, okay? But today it's a reference to all our trabajantes immigrantes and many Mexicans who go to America and later they come back. No? But am I being a revisionist? Maybe for the old historians, or maybe I'm being a free storyteller who is able to find a few facts about this esclavo that might frame him as a primero circumnavigador, okay? So let's take a few minutes to look at the opening scene of my latest film, which took me 35 years to make. Roll it, maestro.
Begins after the circumnavigation